we want to learn about listings. Great idea. So what are really, let's start with the benefits of why we should think about taking more listings rather than taking more buyers. I have a bunch of things taken notes on, so pardon me if you guys see me glance down from time to time, but I want to make sure I cover everything so I don't skip over. First of all, the reasons why you want to do listings over buyers is number one, you have control of your time. Buyers will run you all around town. They will take you out every Saturday and Sunday, taking up your time. You're really at the beck and call of that buyer and that buyer's schedule. You can also choose your own compensation. Based upon the strength and the skills of your presentation and your negotiating skills, you have the ability to set your rate rather than being at the whim of what a listing agent is offering in terms of compensation on the MLS. Also, a listing agent by far, on average, will make more money as a whole. And you become more the employer rather than the employee. Whoever has the inventory has the control of the marketplace, right? You have more opportunities for open houses. You have more opportunities for leveraging that business into more business. You have scalability, where you can handle more listings at a time than you can handle buyers at a time. Because buyers, you have to drive all around town and do all of that. You also have longevity in this business. There's a phrase that says, if you list, you will last in this business. And that is very important if you want to have a long, successful career, not just a flash in the pan success that you get. Buyers, generally why people work more buyers than sellers. If you look at the totality of the agent population, the gross majority of agents, number one, sell very few houses, but also work primarily buyers, where you will have most of the top listing agents or most of the top agents who handle most of the transactions actually mostly handle the listing side of it. Because buyers are easier to get, but they're harder to convert, where sellers are harder to get, but easier to convert. In that buyers will go more to a buyer's agent more willingly than a seller will approach a listing agent on average. Obviously, when you get to become the big fish in the small pond, you start getting those. But in the beginning, it's a lot harder to get a friend or family or a prospect to trust you with their listing rather than, hey, I heard you're a great person. I'm looking to try to find a house. Send me a deal if you find something. You'll get a ton of buyers coming to you, and there's a ton of programs who will sell buyer leads to you because they're easier to get, because buyers are more willing to raise their hand saying, I'm thinking about purchasing. Can you send me a deal? Can you send me something off market? Can you do that? The biggest difference between a listing agent and a buyer's agent is that a listing agent, you have to go after sellers rather than putting out material and having buyers come to you. The biggest difference is you have to go hunt and go after sellers. And that buyers generally will buy the house no matter the agent. Right? You will hear that at open houses or whatever, that they say, no, if you find me a great house, I'll use you. More often than not, buyers don't necessarily care about the agent if the house is for them. That's why you see a lot of people going directly to the listing agent, especially right now in a competitive market, because they see a house and they want it. And remember, beyond all of this, beyond anything that you learn about procedurally, is that people as a whole will make decisions emotionally, and they will justify that decision logically. So don't think so much on procedurally, how do I get X, Y, Z? Remember that buyers and sellers as a whole will make decisions emotionally and justify it with logic. So never forget that it's how you make the prospect feel or your client feel will outweigh anything else that you can do, including your past stats, your anything that we sometimes get in our own head about. about worrying about how long I've been in the business, how many houses I've sold or anything, but how you project yourself and in turn make your clients feel about you is what really will set the difference and set the tone for being able to convert that client and ultimately have a happy client who prefers you tons of business, which is what we all want. Would we all agree? Right? So I wrote down some skills that you have to learn and have to master to become a great listing agent. Because if you're listening to this training or watching this or you're here right now, I imagine you don't just want to be an okay listing agent, but you're telling me, Jacob, I want to be a great listing agent for my clients, but also for my own business and my own peace of mind. So the first thing, as lame as it sounds, is the first skill you have to learn is the skill of your schedule / your time management. That is a skill. And it is very difficult, especially in our business of, oh my goodness, this happened, the sense of urgency that's always going on. But a good, great listing agent is in control of their schedule, where you time block the most important activities. I don't mean you have to be so regimented that you know that between 11:15 and 11:30 is when you go to the bathroom. I mean, the important activities, the income producing activities are time blocked. And we'll go into specifically which ones those are, but here's a summary. Most important things you can time block are number one, your prospecting time and or lead generation time. Number two, your presentation time, meaning when do you schedule your presentations? Obviously, we're going to immediately say, I'll take a presentation whenever. But we should have a time block in our schedule in the event that somebody says, I'm interested in meeting with you. You can have already preset, hey, I have a block of time available at this time. Rather than saying, yeah, when are you available? I'll move everything around. Oh my goodness, I'm not busy at all. But most of the time, when you have a preset schedule, you'll be more conscious that you need to fill it. Rather than saying, I'll move everything around. Have that in your own mind, on your own schedule. When are your presentation times? And also a good listing agent will also set time aside for practicing their income producing activities, their scripting, their dialogue, their presentation styles. But what people will most of the time forget to time block for is the miscellaneous, the time wasting activities, including checking our email, checking our social media, refining certain things. Have a block of time that you say, you know what, that can wait until my time, which is like 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock. I just call it my miscellaneous time. If you want my way of how I personally time block activities, I first start with, what day do I want to take off from my schedule? Doesn't mean that I won't take client calls. It just means I'm not actively going to be prospecting. I'm not actively going to be, practicing and doing all this stuff. And I did say what day, personal belief. If you're building your business, you should be doing this 6 days a week. If your goal is to build. If your goal is just to do a couple transactions and whatever, you don't have to go through this. But if you're saying you're really looking to build a good, solid business, pick one day, take it off from doing that schedule. Don't take off from returning client calls or emails, because that's how you get upset clients, but from the active prospecting generating. Pick one day. Then pick, what are your non-negotiables? What are your family times? What are the things you have to do with your kids or your whatever it is that's a priority for you that's not real estate related? Put it in there. We have lives. Let's just be honest with ourselves. Then take that and ask yourself, when are you the most productive? Usually people are either the morning or the evening times. I'm a morning person. My wife is a night owl. She doesn't turn on until like 10 o'clock at night. That's when she wants to talk, and that's when I'm drained. So you know what I'm saying? So pick whatever you're most effective and have that be your prospecting time, your lead generation time. A lot of people will say you should do it because the prospects are more apt to do whatever. it doesn't matter to me if the prospects are ready, if you are just, bleh, your brain is mush. Like if some of you here right now will say, Jacob, if you ask me to start cold calling at 8 o'clock, dude, I don't wake up until 10. Then dude, either change that or just be honest with yourself and say, when are you effective? That's when you should take advantage of it. One of the beauties of this business is we got into it for the freedom of our own schedule, right? So I'm not going to be here to change that, but the challenge is you need to find out when you're most effective and be diligent during those times. Sound good? Step 1, what day are you taking off? Step 2, when are you the most effective? Have that be the prospecting time, fit everything else around it. Sound good? Second thing, motivation and goal setting. Another one that you're going to say, geez, Louise, that's not listing related. This business, and especially working with sellers, is very difficult. It gets draining. It gets emotionally taxing. You need to have, right before you do your prospecting time, whether that's morning, whether that's even, whatever that time is, you should do at least 30 minutes of reminding yourself why the heck you're even doing this. Why am I about to do cold calls? Why am I about to start doing my SOI calls, even though I've called the same SOI people 14 times in a week in a row? You know what I'm saying? You know, remind yourself why you're doing it. Go over your goals, refine your goals. It should be a daily activity if you're going after sellers, because you have to hunt. Going after buyers, again, is very, sure, guys, we want to look at the, you know what I'm saying? It's a lot less aggressive. You will get less rejection with buyers. You'll just get ghosted. It's really what, they just won't return your call, right? Next, third skill that you need to learn is great lead generation. The number one thing that all top producing listing agents have in common is they are great at lead generation. Great at lead generation. They're not all great at prospecting. They're not all great at cold calling, door knocking, typical sales, whatever, but they are all phenomenal at lead generation. Networking. Oh my goodness. Some of the top agents in the business, you take them to a cocktail party and oh my God, you can't get a hold of them for 3 hours because they're right? Networking, right? Some are admittedly phenomenal at prospecting, expired listings, for sale by owners, all of those things where you have to just cold call, circle prospecting, geo farming, whatever, as crazy as it sounds. Prospecting, a lot of them are phenomenal at that. Other portions of it, marketing, part of lead generation. Marketing, some are phenomenal farmers. Some are phenomenal digital marketers, social media, all of that stuff where you see like videos and that's all marketing. Anytime you put a message out there, whether that be paid or organic, that's marketing. Where you put something out with the intention of generating a phone call or an inquiry in. Easy way to delineate the two. Prospecting is you pushing you out, not a recording or whatever, but you reaching out. Marketing is you putting out a message with the intention of generating a phone call in. Is the two easiest ways to do it. And then I just have like networking as like a subcategory because that's a little bit different, right? Next one, lead follow-up. You have to have very strong lead follow-up. They come into the funnel, you don't let them out unless they sell, right? Couple things about lead follow-up. Number one is urgency. NAR and CAR do things every year about buyers and sellers, what's important to them, always at the top of the list. And it is always a combined over 50% is agent responsiveness. How quickly and how frequently do you respond? Do you communicate? The number one thing, when you guys start going after for sale by owners, for expired listings, the number one thing you will hear why they don't want to list with their other agent is bad communication. I never heard from them again, right? I took the listing, they put the thing up, and I never heard from them. That's the most common thing you'll hear is agent communication above all else is so important, but especially on the lead follow-up, because you're showing them before they hire you how persistent, you could say the word aggressive, but that kind of has a negative connotation, but the responsiveness, how frequently, how effectively do you follow up with them? So number one is the urgency. How quickly, from the time that somebody raises their hand, I want to sell, or I'm thinking about it, how quickly Do you send something to them or follow up with them or anything like that? But also, how effectively do you do it? Do you just do an email that gets lost? Do you just do a text message that doesn't get responded? Do you do a phone call? In the phone call, do you do a voice message? In the voice message, how do you sound? Are you enthusiastic? Are you this? Are you that? Also, are you sending a handwritten note? With that handwritten note, is maybe there a gift that's involved? Not necessarily a huge thing where you're like buying the business, but are you being thoughtful? Are you being strategic with it? Do you know something that they like, and is it a relevant gift to them, or is it just a template thing? You know, those types of things. So number one is the urgency. Number two is the effectiveness, including different things that make you stand out over everybody else. Everybody sends an email. If all you're doing is sending an email, thank you so much for stopping by my open house. Thank you so much for reaching out to me from my friend Sally Mae, who may have referred me to you. Everybody does that. What do you do that is different, that makes them remember you? Bar none. Our number one thing as a new agent or an agent who's looking to break into a newer area, or even just an agent who's looking to revamp their business, our number one challenge is obscurity. No one remembers or knows who we are. Because if they did, they would have already been calling you and listing with you, right? Appointment setting is the next skill. How skilled are you at setting appointments? Part of that skill of setting appointments is how easy does it seem for them to want an appointment? Do you make it seem like a big deal? Do you make it seem like, oh my goodness, when can I get together and sit down with you for an hour and a half to discuss your goals and your needs? Versus, hey, when's a good time for me to swing by and take a look at your house? Your first goal, whether you're breaking into a new farm or whether you just get a lead for a seller who might be considering, your first goal is to cross the threshold, meaning get inside the house. How easy do you make that for them, not yourself, right? How easy do you make it for them, or do you make it seem like a big deal? A lot of the time we're nervous, so we think it's a big deal. So our tonality is that we're nervous, which makes them feel nervous that, wait, should we be doing this? How easy do you make it for your prospective client for that? For the appointment, next skill, appointment preparation. How skilled are we for preparing? Do we know what to bring? Do we know what's an effective pieces of information? Do we have a pre-listing package? Do we have a bio about ourselves? Do we have a pre-written plan of action? What are we going to do for them, right? Because one of the big questions they have is, what are you going to do for me? If I list with you, what are you going to do? Because one of the questions before this training class was, hey, so when I get the listing, what do I do? That's what they want to know from you. So do you have a pre-listing package? Do you do a pre-listing phone call? Some people call it the pre-qualification. If you're doing a full listing presentation and you know you're competing, like they're ready to list, one of the questions was, how do we set ourselves apart from the other competition, if you will? The number one way to set ourselves apart is to have a higher degree of professionalism. We can talk about our personality and how we stand out and the cool marketing, but the first thing we should always think of as becoming listing agents is upping our level of professionalism to show our prospective client that you're not just listing with me because I'm a friend or someone referred me or because we had a great communication, but because this is my job, this is my career, and I take pride in it, and I want to represent you, I want to represent myself with the utmost professionalism possible. A pre-listing call is a great way to establish yourself versus someone else, because most people just show up to the door, versus you calling, asking them some questions so that you can better understand what they're really looking to accomplish, so you can be more prepared and have a more effective meeting. Previewing the comparable sales. Everybody does a CMA, but have you previewed and do you have deep knowledge of that marketplace so you can speak intelligently on your CMA? Not just say, hey, look at these photos. This compares differently to this, or this was within 1 mile of your house, versus you saying, hey, yeah, the positioning on that lot was a little bit different. You're going to get better sunsets, and people in this neighborhood really prioritize that. And even though the photos of this house looked a little bit better than yours, little bit better than yours. When you walked in, oh my goodness, it was actually really gross. I don't know what they did with those photos. They actually virtually staged this, that. You guys know what I'm saying. But being able to speak intelligently on the comparables, or what I actually like to say is relevant sales. I'll say it to you, comparables, but to clients, nothing is comparable to their home in their mind, right? For every seller, my home is totally different than everything, right? Totally different. They may have differences, so get used to saying relevant sales. An appraiser will look at this as a relevant sale. Nothing is compared to your home, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. I totally agree. Your fluorescent lights are so much newer than the other fluorescent lights. You know what I'm saying? So previewing the home to prepare for the open house, previewing the other homes, what's sold, at least driving by if you're running short on time. The listing presentation itself is another skill. That's a whole kit and caboodle different. But at a minimum, are we showing up ahead of time to get our mind right? Are we reviewing our dialogues, our CMA one more time before we walk up? Are we showing up there early and parking right in front of their house so they see that we're early? You know, are we clearing our head? How do we approach the door? When they first answer the door, what's our introduction? Do we immediately start off strong and confident? Or do we say, hey, thanks for taking the time. Can I come in? You know what I'm saying? What comes out of our mouth as soon as they open the door that automatically makes them feel like you're different? Then it's the tour. Walking through the home, taking notes on ways that they can improve their value, taking notes on what concerns do you have as a listing agent. You don't necessarily have to share that with them right off the bat because you don't want to really prioritize or really kind of hone in on the negative, right? But you're taking your own internal notes. Some people say, I don't like to go with the seller. There's actually a trainer who will say, let me walk through the home by myself and see it through the eyes of the buyer. You sit in your kitchen by yourself and I'm going to walk through your house even though we've kind of just met, and let me look through your closet. I don't know. Some people like doing that. I never did. It's up to you. You decide. I like to personally build what they call build rapport, right? Chat with the seller, but also it's a way for me to share with them my value while I'm walking through, to kind of little, you know, it was taught peppering your value proposition as you're walking through, building rapport, peppering your value proposition, taking notes on ways that you could help them improve their value, but also, you know, prep for some concerns that you might have coming up. After you get done with the tour is the consultation. You chat with them. You review either the notes that you took during your pre-listing call or fill in some notes that you should have done that ahead of time, but also get a better understanding of really what they're looking for, having the conversation first. Sometimes a lot of us just jump into the presentation and this is what I can do for you, right? Where in reality, that next step, which is the proposal, right, is the presentation. That should be the smallest percentage of what you're really doing. Because most people don't want a presentation. I used to bring my first team listing book and put it on the table, put my hand on it and say, hey, the company would love for me to give you this presentation and I have 75 slides here that I would love to share with you. Would you like me to give you the presentation or would you rather have more of a conversation? I would say maybe 1 to 2 people will ever say, oh yes, please show me what you got. You know, most people say, no, please. Oh, thank God. Please, let's just talk about it. You know what I'm saying? So having more of a conversation, but having the proposal ready. What are you going to do? Hey, I'm glad that we got this underway. Hey, look, when you list your home with me, this is what's going to happen. First, we're going to do this. Then we're going to do that. Then we're going to unleash the flood of buyers who are ready to go into your home. You want that. Because that's really at the end of the day, when we talk about the close is really just the ask. There are hundreds of ways to ask for it. An easy way is, hey, so when do you want me to get started? Or, hey, when do you want to schedule photos? I'm a big assumptive closer. That's my style. I'm not there are trainers who will say, great, are you ready to get started? Sign the contract. I'm not a big hard closer. If that's your style, we can chat about that. My style is much more assumptive closing. I love asking the question, great, so when do you want my photographer to come in and take some shots? Or when do you guys think you'll be ready for photos. And I just start writing. But the bottom line is, based upon all the information that I shared with you, do you have any other questions, or are you ready to get started? That's an easy, low, low rejection way of making sure that you covered everything. Do you have any other questions, or are you ready to get started? And then you shut up and let them say something. That's an easy way. If you want to do the assumptive close, great. So when do you want my photographer to come out? Great. Ready? When are you ready for this? When would you like to schedule your open house? Like assumptive closing that way. And then great, let's just get the paperwork out of the way, right? I'm a big fan of saying, let's get the paperwork out of the way. Let's get the paperwork out of the way. That's my style. Some people say, sign the contract. Some people say, sign the agreement. I'm not a hard closer. If that's your style, by all means, go for it. I feel much more comfortable saying, let's just get the paperwork out of the way. Great. Boom. And then when when you send it to them, or when you, like right now where it's virtually, because one of the questions was, how do we do this virtually? There's very little that is different about virtual than not. I also, because we are deemed an essential service per when this is recording, asterisk, 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 we are deemed an essential service. So we have the ability to come in and view the home. I still recommend doing that. Zoom appointments are phenomenal in that they are an efficient use of your time. And I have known personally, Zoom or electronic or FaceTime or what have you, appointments are significantly quicker. People don't like sitting on a computer and watching. Even some of you who are here live are probably like, okay, let's get this going. It's much more difficult to stare at a screen for a longer period of time. Much more difficult to do that than if you're sitting in person and engaged and looking at that. So the only difference is you actually have to be more prepared virtually, because you have to have slides ready and all of that, and we can cover that. But we have all of that for you in terms of presentation. It's a matter of you customizing it for yourself to make you feel comfortable. So I'm a fan of the yes or yes script. You know, would you rather do this? So do you want to price our house at this, or do you want to price your house at this, right? Doing that. But not necessarily asking a yes or no question. It's totally up to you on how you want to close. But the thing is at the end, you have to close. Remember, your goal at the listing appointment is to get it signed or to get all the objections out. So if you come back from a listing appointment, I say, how did it go? And you say, oh, it went pretty well. And I'll say, great, did you get it signed? And you say, well, no, they're going to think about it. And then I said, well, what objections did you get? And you're like, well, they didn't really say any objections other than that they just kind of want to think it over for a little. You know what I'm saying? Most of the time, the objections that we get were a non-objection because we didn't really ask. Did we ask for the order? Did we ask for do that? Next skill, handling objections. The first key with handling objections is to anticipate the objections. There's only a handful of objections, right, that a seller will give. I want to list for higher than you're saying, which is also higher than what it's worth or what have you, right? Can you do it for less commission? I have a brother in the business, AKA he'll do it for less commission, right? Can we have a shorter time frame? I don't want to list for 6 months, a year, whatever. Can we do it for 30 days? I saw an advertisement that'll be 30 days, right? Those types of objections, anticipating those, pre-writing down what are your objections. And the biggest thing about objection handling is practicing them to the point where you internalize the objection and say it confidently, because more often than not, your confidence in the way you answer matters more than the actual words that come out of your mouth. Very popular objection handling for, will you do it for less commission? No. Do you have any other questions? Right? That's a very popular way to do it. Not my personal strategy, but that's a very popular way to do it. And if you say it with conviction, most sellers will kind of be shocked, taken aback, and go, okay. Right? I have a friend in the business. Okay, do you mind if I ask why you didn't already list with them and why I'm here today? Well, I wanted to compare what he did to what you did. Okay, great. So how do you like what I do versus what they do? Well, you do much more. Great. Do you have any other questions? You're ready to get started. You know what I'm saying? It's coming up with your answers. It doesn't have to be the ideal because you don't know. Nobody knows. You can Google objection handling for sellers, and I promise you, you'll find millions of search hits, and they will all sound fairly similar. Find the one that works with you, resonates with you. Be confident in it because you're planning ahead. And when they say it, you just kind of be like, oh, yeah, I knew you were going to say that. Boom, here's my answer, right? Pricing property is another skill to have, and that is a skill. There is also an art to pricing property because there's a difference between the value of a home and the sales price of a home. There's a difference between the value of a home and sales price for a home, meaning I see homes and you see homes that sell well under value all the time. We see homes that sell over value all the time. Why is that? It'll be a combination between the value, which is what an appraiser would objectively say based upon the comparables, it's about this value, and the sales pressure of a home. How much interest is there? And that plays a role into how it's being marketed. That has a role into what's the market conditions currently at that time. That also has to do with what's happening for that home's market, because there's a difference between the market and an individual home's market. We've all seen homes that have had multiple offers that it sells and you get the counter offer back and you're like, what the heck? What? Nothing is sold like this, right? How do they expect me to handle these time frame contingencies? How does this happen? How does that? Because the sales pressure on that home is such that they're commanding a certain price. But also knowing how to value a property. There's trainings to do that, and we will do that as well, but knowing how to know the value, but also how to learn it quickly on the fly. Or maybe you don't work that marketplace, but how to use the MLS and how to identify what is market value quickly, because that is a skill. I'm a big believer in asking the seller, what do you care more about? The value of your home or what it will sell for? Because they all want to know, what's my house worth, right? That's one of the big questions. There's only a few questions they want to know up front, right? What's my house worth? What are you going to charge me? What are you going to do to sell my home? What makes you different than everybody else? And how long it's going to take to sell? I don't know if I already said that one, right? I mean, there's only a handful of questions they actually like forefront of their mind have. There's a lot of subconscious things, right? But those are really the main ones. So I love going into, what do you care more about? What it's worth or what it'll sell for? Because I have the belief that the listing price has nothing to do with the value of the house. That's my belief. I believe that the listing price is a marketing strategy to get people to look at it, to get people through the front door. I've told the story a couple times. I'll say it again. I've put in the MLS. Like, there is no guess and check system on the MLS. You can price a house at whatever you want. I can tell you a story. I priced a home. It was supposed to be $539,000 on the MLS currently, as it's being recorded. It does not auto put in the commas when you do the 0000. I accidentally put in an extra zero. I priced that $539,000 house for $5.39 million. The MLS didn't have a pop-up screen that said, "Are you sure, Jacob?" It just said, "Sure, whatever." Listing price has nothing to do with the value of the house. It's the marketing strategy. And there's three ways to price a home. There's three ways to price a home. You price it at a price that attracts an offer. You price it at a price that doesn't attract an offer. or you price it at a price that attracts multiple offers. And within X number of days/weeks, we will know which strategy we will have chosen, because the market will bear what the market will bear. Don't take ownership of the price by X number of days. It depends on your market. It depends on the market conditions. Right now, we'll know within 2 weeks with the current market, right? Because it comes down to, is it being fully exposed to the marketplace? Are there plentiful buyers? Because some markets, homes take on average a year to sell in the ultra luxury market. So it'll take more time to be properly exposed to the right, because the buyer pools are so much smaller. But in a bread and butter market, which is our general market area, within 2 weeks, we'll know which strategy we'll have chosen. And also being able to utilize market trends to know what is the market in terms of, are we in a seller's market, a neutral market, a buyer's market, starting with the county, market trends of the county, market trends of the city, market trends of the zip code, and then your CMA. Start first up here, because the question you will get as an agent is, how's the market? The question is, what market are you talking about? Are you talking about the Orange County market? Are you talking about this city's market? Are you talking about the zip code market? Are you talking about your neighborhood? That's your CMA. So going wide down to narrow gives you an idea on the velocity of the market. That is a great way of learning how to price, because it's one thing to know how to value a home. It's a completely different thing to know how to price a home to get it sold. Then how to prep a home for sale. What do you need to do? Where's a good place for carpet, for paint? What are the things that are going to make a difference? First step, curb appeal, right? Let's just start with that. Curb appeal is really the first step, because if they drive to the house and the backyard is phenomenal and the kitchen is, oh my goodness, gorgeous, but you look up and the house looks like it's a haunted house and it looks like, oh my goodness, it's terrifying, they're not going to want to go through the front door. So step one, get them through the door, right? Good rule of thumb, kitchens and bathrooms. That's a great rule of thumb, is one of the highest returns. But making sure that the colors are neutral, or at least what the current market is liking, right? Earlier 2000s, it was a lot of like, what is it, like tan/khakis? You know, now it's a lot more grays, you know, where it's white kitchens and grays and all of that, where early 2000s, a lot more tans and khakis and the granite and the, you know, those types of things. So it'll change over time, but neutral, the good kind of rule of thumb, the colors. Is it decluttered? Is it filled with stuff, or you have it nice and cleaned off? Is it clean? It's another one. Is it clean? Is it depersonalized? Are there photos of them everywhere? You want to depersonalize it as much as possible, but also making sure you prep for challenges. The legalities. Is the water heater strapped, right? Is there smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors? What is per code from what an appraiser is going to call out or an inspector is going to call out to prep for that? Also, pre-marketing. When do you get photos done? What do you do with the photos when you get it? How to prep the marketing material. That way, when you're ready to hit the market, boom, you can blast it out. Pre-marketing. How to write an effective MLS. What's required? What things make it different in searchabilities? What things syndicate? You should know how long a description can be. How many characters are allowed in a description? How many characters did the competition use? What makes a difference? Why people want to move to some areas versus others? How to handle showings once it's available? How do you effectively handle showings and communicate feedback from the showings to your clients? How do you get the proper feedback? Because most agents won't give it willingly. They'll just say, hey, thanks for letting me showing. You'd be lucky if you get a text, hey, we're all done. Meanwhile, your client's driving around the block saying, hey, when can we come home? You know, getting those things done. How to handle negotiations the right way to maximize the value that a client gets. How to handle escrows. What's an effective, efficient way of handling escrows to prevent problems, ensure a smooth transaction, have a client happy at the end of the day? Very common thing is for clients to be upset at the end of escrow, because most of the time it's 30 days of, oh my goodness, we're rushing to this. Plan ahead for challenges. That way you don't pressure a client or say, oh my goodness, you got to send this right now, or else, you know, we're up against the time frame that I forgot to let you know. Do you have a transaction coordinator that helps you with the paperwork? Have you prepped your client for disclosures? What do disclosures say? What goes into them? How do you effectively fill them out so you disclose everything, but you also don't scare the heck out of a buyer out of the transaction, but you also don't not disclose something and get yourself in potential hot water for later? How do you protect your clients throughout this whole process, ensure a smooth transaction, and ultimately build a referral and repeat business so that way you don't have to prospect as much? Because that's the difference between a listing agent crushing it and having 10 years of no longer having to dial on the phone for expired listings or door knocking or anything, where you just have a database of clientele who would willingly refer you out, and where you're known and your reputation and your professionalism precedes you. So you have to do less and less selling at the presentation. But that's what it takes to really be a good listing agent. And putting this all together, again, this is an intro into what skills you need to learn. But the good thing is that we have subsequent videos that we will be doing to help dive into each one of these and what tools we have at First Team and in our office that help make all of this easier, like sneak preview, like market trends, like so many other affiliated tools that we have to make CMAs a lot easier and a lot nicer, to make all of these showings a lot easier to maintain, and ultimately integrations with getting testimonials and getting referrals if we set it up correctly with our current CRM and our testimonial network that we're doing. But I hope this was helpful. I appreciate your time, and I'll see you on the next one.